And now I would like to call upon our first presenter, Benjamin Kharam, who is a PhD scholar from Department of English, Tejpur University, India. And the title I've already shared with you. Yes, ma'am?
Ma'am, when shall we have the questionnaire session, ma'am? Shall we have it after each presenter's presentation or at the end of all the presentation, ma'am?
I think in the end of the session, it would be, if you're comfortable that way, so in the end of the session, we can have all the questions together.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
And I hope the time limit is already, you know that time limit is from 10 minutes to 12 minutes. And that's it. No more instructions, please. Doctor, please, Benjamin, please continue with your presentation now.
Thank you very much. I prepared a little slide, so let me try sharing it. Please let me know if it's visible for everyone.
No, the slides are not visible, but we can see you.
Oh.
Yeah. I think your slides also we can see now.
Oh, okay. Okay. Let me proceed. So my my area of study is on archives, and I've chosen anthologies, poetry anthologies specifically for my research. But this paper I'm presenting, it's tangentially related to my research, and I thought, this Diaspora Anthologies, which that I have been dealing with for some time. It's interesting. It's very new and interesting, and I thought I would, present a small paper regarding this topic. So I'll be discussing two broad parts. In part one, I'll be talking about what are anthologies briefly, and why anthologies matter, and subsequently, historical arguments that have existed against anthologies and the new emerging trends in anthologies. Part two, I will go and discuss directly on the relevant area, that is, the diaspora anthologies and its nature and its problems. So, So why anthologies matter, right? Poetry anthologies exists in a liminal space, serving the dual objectives of announcing new poetry and also the creation of canonical archives. The formation of modern Indian poetry took place within the pages of anthologies through a long, twisted editorial trajectory involving inclusion and exclusion, negotiation, acculturation, and synthesis of text. Indian poetry in English has a long legacy going back 200 years, but modernism came into Indian poetry post-1950s, after the colonial liberation. Since then, the parameters of the new poetry have kept evolving. Since the 1990s, there has been an emerging interest in anthologizing poetry of the marginal, regional, and diasporic voices. Anthologies, both the commercial and academic variant, serve as the backbone of the national literary canon. It is primarily through the anthology medium that modern Indian poetry has been kept alive among the consciousness of readers, and each new anthology still makes an effort to expand the canon or create new canons. Owing to the very nature of the anthology medium, which depends fundamentally on a selection process, and owing to the enormous cultural makeup of India, the poetry anthologies published, no matter how comprehensive, suffer from criticism. The establishment of an Indian canon has been made more complicated with the emergence of increasing diaspora writers who have become significant voices on the international front. The publication of such diaspora anthologies raises many questions regarding the consolidation of their identity and where they locate themselves within the larger established tradition. Thus, these anthologies become not just spaces for consolidation and archiving, but also act as construction sites where new ideas of literary modernism are created. The argument against anthologies has been one that derides this volume as being superficial, offering only a dislocated collection of texts stripped from their intended collections and their contexts. There exists a long-standing criticism against poetry anthologies from giants such as T.S. Eliot, Robert Graves, and Laura Riding, who argues that the serious nature of poetry and poets is trivialized and even actively destroyed by anthologies, cutting up poetry. Despite these ongoing accusations, only anthologies have consistently played a significant role in the making and unmaking of the modern canon. However, to begin an examination of anthologies, it is necessary to understand the nature of politics and intent that drives these powerful and often controversial volumes, which have permeated not just the university curriculum, but also among the wider market of public readers. The project of establishing a fresh Indian literary identity began immediately after independence, with anthologies such as Modern Indian Poetry, 1958, and Modern Indo-Anglian Poetry, 1959, both published by Kavita Books in New Delhi. These volumes were already conscious of the potential of the anthology and its capacity to inject fresh ideas into the literary landscape. Over the last 7 decades, the publication of poetry anthology has become frequent and varied. Between 1990 and 2020, more than 95 anthologies of Indian poetry in English were published, which is a much greater number than the poetry anthologies collectively published between the ideologically fertile post-independent years between 1950 and 1970. The emerging book market and inclusion of literary studies in educational curricula have contributed immensely to the surge in popularity of anthologies in recent decades. However, anthologies remain an acutely political space, and as debates and discourses regarding the democratic representation of linguistic and cultural diversity have emerged with increasing intensity, the contents of anthologies have been put under scrutiny. Anthologies of Indian poetry written in English have become extremely varied. It has now become dislocated from the National Literature Project and has entered into the making of more interest-based, identity-based, and ideologically based volumes. The current Indian poetry anthologies may be broadly categorized into 3 types: canonical, the topical anthologies, and diaspora anthologies. These parallel or alternative variants of poetry anthologies are separated by their specialized interest, be it exploration of themes, an effort to bridge cultural ties, or the need to establish political identities. But one thing that they have in common is that they all create boundaries. In recent years, the number of diaspora anthologies published has been gradually on the rise, and with it, their radical nature too. 2 diaspora collectives that have come into existence: Matwala, based in New York, United States, and The Whole Kahani, based in London in UK, apart from organizing and engaging events, have also started publishing their poetry anthologies since 2015 of the newer diaspora poets. Matwala anthology, titled Maps, is an anthology by them and for them, and not a publisher-commissioned work. The fact that it is also made available for non-profit free access online clearly indicates that the intention is not commercial, but rather an ideological one. Moreover, the existence of these diaspora anthologies reflects the seriousness of the collectives in consolidating their poetry and their identity. The Matwala anthology represents a case not of forced identity, but an identity that has been created organically from within. But such questions still linger. How do we define the diaspora anthology? Where does it historically stand in the overall tradition of modern Indian poetry and Indian poetry anthology? The activities of the diaspora collective have been quite frequent and engaging, yet their goals seem to be driven purely on an objective to engage a foreign or global audience. The venues chosen for the gatherings, viz. Hunter College, New York, Cambridge University, are all strategic, and before long we may see their poetry distilling into anthologies published by university presses. The question of what new anthologies should accomplish is still a troublesome one. There has been a historical continuation of criticism against anthologies, and these efforts of the diaspora poets succumb to the same scrutiny. Usha Akela co-founder of the Matwala Collective, state in the introductory section of their anthology that our aim is to have our voices heard and included in mainstream American literature and to increase awareness and appreciation of South Asian poetry. On the other hand, Kavita A. Jindal, founder of the Whole Kahani Collective, describes the creation of the group as an outlet to provide a creative perspective that straddles culture and boundaries, and added that the objectives of publishing an alternative literary canon like theirs that encompass two or more cultures is because such books find a place and is read by global readers. Their statements reveal a very visible crisis of belonging, as to be part of a diaspora is to dwell in the intersections of exile and longing. Their anthologies are the product and culmination of belonging to a culturally unified origin. Yet there is also a deep sense of Eurocentric ambition revealed in their anthology notes. Do these anthologies address nostalgia for their homelands? Do they want to establish an independent South Asian identity? Do they desire a place within the Western canon? The answers are difficult, perhaps a bit of everything and a whole of nothing in particular. As one of the tangents of new modernism, the existence of these diaspora anthologies complicates an already complicated medium. Bringing out an anthology of poetry that reflects certain collective identities is always a formidable task, but when one looks at the history of anthologies of modern Indian poetry, starting from the anthologies of the early 1950s up to the present, each project becomes inclined towards the creation of a national literary narrative. The anthological publications of the Matwala and the Whole Kahani, although not disruptive at the moment, is already setting out new paths towards the expression of solidified parallel identities. The Diaspora Anthology, as a new subgenre within the anthology itself, is loaded with necessary manifestations of the desire to be seen, to be heard, to be read, and most importantly, to bring solidarity by identifying commonalities as coming from the same part of the world rather than existence of provincial differences. The desire to be read and the desire to be among an established canon also reveal a deep sense of survival. This serves as an acute argument of dislocated identity and a broader commentary on the nature of modern poetry and the challenges of being relevant. I end my presentation here.
Okay, thank you so much, Benjamin. It was really a wonderful presentation. Now we'll move on to the next presenter, and that is P. Kavin Kumar. He's a MPhil research scholar, and the second presenter is I think Arun Bharat, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Sri Ramakrishna Mission Vidyalaya College of Arts and Science, Coimbatore. And their topic is Post-Colonial Alienation in Coetzee's Disgrace and Untouched, The English Patient, a Humanistic Study. Sir?
Yes.
Yeah, please proceed.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yeah, you're audible.
Ma'am, is my screen visible?
Yeah, Kavin, we can see your slides.
Yes, thank you. My topic is on post-colonial alienation and Coetzee's Disgrace and Untouched, the English Patient, a humanistic study. Author introduction. John Maxwell Coetzee was born on 9 February 1940. He was a South African-Australian novelist, essayist, linguist, and translator who won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 2003. And he also won Booker Prize twice. He has written 14 novels, 4 autobiographical novels, 3 short fiction. My next author is Michael Untouched. He was born on 12th September 1943. He was a Sri Lankan-born Canadian poet, fiction writer, essayist, novelist, editor, and filmmaker. He has won Governor General Award for poetry. He has also won Booker Prize, Pulitzer Prize. He has written 7 novels and 13 poetry collections. Post-Colonialism. A post-colonial literary theory examines cultural and other issues that have emerged as a result of colonialism. It continues to be criticized that victims of colonialist alienation are denied any form of self-determination and are also cut off from their speech, faith, past, lifestyle, social and political entities. It signifies emotional isolation and separation from one's social and political entities. It is also concerned with psychological issues. This emotional isolation and psychological issues is associated with Franz Fanon, the French philosopher and psychiatrist. He discussed the discourse of colonialism, race, and violence. He is also influenced by Karl Marx's alienation. Disgrace. Disgrace is a novel written by John Maxwell Coetzee that is set in South Africa after apartheid. It narrates the story of David, communications professor, Captain, Technical University in South Africa, who loses everything as a result of an affair with a student. He goes through several stages of life before deciding to live with his daughter in East Cape, owned by his daughter Lucy. David initially has difficulty adapting to himself in country life. When he is forced to witness a shocking incident shortly after settling into rural life, the 3 men attack the fort, rape Lucy, assault him, kill all but their dogs, and steal some materials. David calls the cops. Lucy says nothing about the incident, but later it is revealed that she is pregnant. Lucy is deeply scared and emotionally disturbed from the attack. And David comes to know that Lucy's become pregnant. And he's also not expecting that Lucy's decision that to marry Petrus for the sake of protection. This is Petrus, an African who works for Lucy. And coming to the English Patient. English Patient is a novel by Michael Ondaatje, which tells the story of 4 individuals who were gathered in an abandoned Italian villa during the World War II. English Patient is the protagonist of the novel, and the Hannah, a 20-year-old nurse, is also another important character who travels throughout the novel with the English Patient by
Both the novels.
Kripal Singh is a 25-year-old bomb dismantler or diffuser from India. He used to diffuse bombs for the English people in the East Florence, Italy. David Caravaggio, a friend of Hannah's father, after his arrival, Hannah becomes psychologically affected from his past because of his past and also because of the death of her father. Each of these characters finds him or herself far away from home and displaced by the war. By reading both the novels, I would like to discuss the similarities and dissimilarities of the authors in their perspectives. First, Disgrace, the theme of suffering, which is like the people of color are still fighting for the right to be treated equally with whites because they have suffered for so long. The majority of them have a strong hatred for white people. Lucy's sexual assault is one crucial incident, and despite the novel written in post-apartheid era, it does not address any political issues. However, author does not write directly about life under apartheid. Instead, he focuses on the pains that the characters are experiencing. The next theme is self-suffering, which is depicted in the English Patient. Hannah has alienated herself in the villa during the World War II to take care of the English patient. Even though she doesn't know the true identity of the English patient, she's ready to take care of the English patient. Kip, another important character, suffering due to alienation. He's diffusing bombs. He is also psychologically affected due to the impacts of colonialism and the politics of war. Next, I'm coming to situational attitudes. In the Disgrace novel, the protagonist David tries to beat bullets because he's the one who assaulted her daughter. The English patient, he burst out while the English drop bombs. While the English draw bombs, he is helping the people by diffusing bombs. Coming to society and class. In Disgrace, David White man living in a multicultural society, and all the characters in the novel psychologically affected by the country's current issue. In the English patient, war is the one important thing that affects characters' psyche, makes them alienate from actual world. Being alienated means seeing one's world and others unto themselves. It is felt by characters of both the novels. When it comes to Disgrace, Lucy isolates herself from the David's advice, and when it comes to an English patient, Hannah isolates herself from the town world to take care of the English patient. By comparing both the novels, I would like to conclude that self-alienation is caused by both individual attitudes and also by situational attitudes. And also the two novels are diachronics and diachronic when it comes to time period. There is some resemblance between two novels. In Disgrace is the transaction from apartheid to post-apartheid South Africa. The circumstances are shown to influence the characters' viewpoints, and also the characters like Hannah, Kip, and Lucy measure humanism through their actions. Lucy in Disgrace chooses to live with Petrus and accepts Pollock's child. Even she knows that they are from black community, she accepts the Petrus and also accepts Pollock's child. Hannah, the English patient, isolates herself from the war-torn world and Kip diffuses bomb, even though he knows that he is assisting his elimination. Characters in the novels never lose their humanity, no matter how difficult the situation is. And finally, this paper showcases that how they become similar in their viewpoints of humanism through the colonial lens. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, P. Kavin Kumar. Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. Now, may I request the third presenter, Dr. Vandana, to please start with your presentation.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, after Kavin, it is my turn. This is Manju Chauhan.
Yeah, earlier also I was taking out your name, calling your name only, but actually someone told me that it's not Manju, it's Vandana. So
No,
yeah, if you're there,
my turn is after Benjamin and Kavin.
Yeah, right. So Manju, you can proceed with your presentation now.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, ma'am. Am I visible or audible, ma'am?
Yeah, Manju, we can see your slides also, and you're quite audible.
Okay, ma'am.
Continue, please.
Okay, my topic is dislocation to relocation and self-actualization in the two novel of Chitra Banerjee's Diva Karani, Arranged Marriage and the Mistress of Spices. First of all, the introduction and the background of the writer. Chitra Banerjee Devakarani is a poet, author, and educator who have achieved countless awards. Her writing has appeared in more than 50 journals, including the Atlantic Monthly and the New Yorker, and she has contributed to more than 50 anthologies. Her books have been translated into 29 other languages, including Dutch, Hebrew, Japanese, to identify a few. Many of Devakarani's work deal with the settler encounter, which is an important topic in the American diverse society. Her book, Arranged Marriage, which was awarded an American Book Award, is a series of stories about Indian women caught in the middle of the two worlds. This paper is based on Chitra Banerjee Devakarani's acclaimed debut collection of short stories, Arranged Marriage, and Mistress of Spices. Her representation of Indian born women beginning new lives in America, as well as her depiction of the institution of marriage and when men women relationship in the diasporic environment, has been studied. These stories are noteworthy not just for exhibiting her enormous literary potential as a storyteller and character painter, but also for functioning as a compass pointing to the women centric course her future work will take. Furthermore, the short stories format allows Divakarni to explore a diverse variety of setting and characters across time and distance, drawn from a diverse range of age group and walks of life in both India and United States. In her short story collection titled Arranged Marriage, Chitra Banerjee, an Indian diaspora female writer, wrote extensively on women's difficulties, notably in diasporic conditions and their haunted recollections of their country of origin. From a feminist viewpoint, she has investigated different issues concerning Indian immigrants, women in diasporic space, and their resistance to rigid and unequal cultural practices. Her writings dealt with the feminist critical studies as well as various themes such as transnationalism, multiculturalism, colonialism, migration, exile, and cultural conflicts. These diasporic dimensions of immigration are at the heart of Divakarni's numerous narratives, which would not exist without them. She developed Maitri, a hotline for South Asian women from other countries who are experiencing domestic violence, psychological and physical abuse, and other issues as second generation immigrants. Arranged Marriage, an anthology of 11 short stories, is inspired by the Maitri, who pushes Divakarni to interact with women's violence and bravery of South Asian immigrant women. Arranged Marriage, which is published in 1995, is a collection of 11 short stories about women in India and United States as well. She exposes women's misery, position, existence, as well as their search for identity, prejudice, cultural hybridity, and traditional stereotypes. Divakarni's representation of diasporic sorrow and a new form of feeling, she has critically examined arranged wedding in India as well as Indians born in America via feminist glasses. Women in India are subjected to brutish and cruel treatment in married lives. Both the bride and the groom's family studied their horoscope for compatibility of matched spouses in their diasporic depiction of marriage. They allow their partners to marry without prior consent and understanding of it becomes suitable for them. And moreoverly, fails to assure domestic delights in the very function of marriage, but to be harass the women in the diaspora. Self-observation is the foundation of personality arranged for the central character Tilotama in the Mistress of Spices, which is published in 1997. Tilo develops a variety of consciousness as she tries to define herself as South Asian and American, which show up in both her experiences and her eventual connection with her racial and sexual characters. Tilo experiences herself though the perspective of her greater society, which causes her personality biswas to have and various and usually conflicting simultaneous memories. Tilo, a mysterious character who operates a grocery shop and distributes spices to help clients overcome challenges, is the protagonist of the novel The Mistress of Spices. Tilo sells spices not only for cooking but also for the Indian immigrants at her shop who are homesick and alienated. She faces problems along the way. She falls in love with a non-Indian. This causes major tensions as she must choose between serving her people and following the road that will lead to the desired pleasure. Tilo must pick which aspects of her background she will keep. Divakarni highlights the main issue of India's early life of Tilo, which is that Indians regard girl child as unwanted. The spice business, which serves the entire Indian population, is a microcosm in and it's of itself. Many of the people who came there have been their ambitions as immigrants destroyed in the dust. But there are also some success stories. Also, there is the example of Lalita and Jagjit in the Mistress of Spices. The dilemma of people who migrate is that though they change their place, but the heart remains in the things of the past also. So when the novel concludes on a bright note with the traditional immigrant story of dreams, desires, sufferings, and hardships culminating in hope, Divakarni succeeds in portraying a balanced image of the world of immigrants in America. Aside from the blend of fantasy and truth, they aren't all winners, but they aren't all losers either. So, in the conventional sense, conflicts occur because each of the women equipped with the heightened awareness wishes to be regarded as individual and merely as a wife. One of the locations where masculine dominance operates is in the area. She needs to establish her innocence by presenting her female protagonist with their family setups, resisting constraining social institutions, and emerging as an independent woman who achieves inner harmony and happiness on her own terms. Raven, like Tilo, vows to accompany him and strives to find an earthly paradise in her company. She then asks Raven to help her select a name that is both American and Indian, as her life as Tilo is coming to an end. Divakarni's arranged marriage is a realistic portrayal of women in Indian society living under the shadow of patriarchy and their internal struggle to break free from deeply ingrained oppressive conventional ideals. Because women may equally contribute to the upliftment of home and nation as a whole, there is a need to enhance women's condition in diasporic space. So Divakarni's arranged marriage and the Mistress of Spices illustrate the conservative traditions are to blame for women's exploitation and oppression, but progressive and modern thought will definitely pull a woman out of that quagmire and into a new liberal life also. Multiculturalism, hybridity, exile, displacement, marginalization, and dislocation are just a few of the terms that dominate modern post-colonial discourse and are manifestation of the experience of the diaspora. Female protagonists in diaspora works by women writers provide a fertile ground for addressing the suffering of immigration as they struggle with personal or social self-identity struggle in a new or unknown land. Chitra Banerjee's writing also deal with displacement and the struggle of female protagonists to adjust to change in socio-cultural lifestyles also. Her works, which mostly deal with expatriate existential dilemmas, address two problematic areas of contemporary post-colonial issues: diaspora, migration, nostalgia, and shifting identity based on her own rich experience as immigrant. Divakarni depicts the struggle, rootlessness, and as well as the adaptation and the observation of foreign cultures by Indian diaspora. She skillfully portrays how expatriate women endowed with the feminine ability to relate to two homes at once use wisdom and compassion to empathize with two different cultures, Indian and American, and to heal fractured selves, their own and the others, by synthesizing the moderate and the best aspects of both cultures. Divakarni proposes a third feminine vision, one with far-reaching societal and patriarchal in India, where attempts to assert feminine identity have been greeted with terrible violence from orthodoxy and patriarchy. She is inspired by both Indian and European feminist writer. So Divakarni's sympathetic and candid presentation of the lives of the third world women may serve as a counterbalance to the usual Eurocentric slant of Western feminist ideologies. Thank you.
Thank you, Manju. Thank you so much for your presentation. Now, may I invite the fourth presenter, that is Ms. Richa Sharma, PhD scholar, along with Dr. Shruti Mita Mehta.
Yeah.
From
Hello.
North Cap University.
Hello.
Gurgaon.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yeah. Audible.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon. I'm speaking Dr. Anita Goswami.
Okay,
You have recalled my name. So my paper will be presented by Miss Vandana Gautam. She is my research scholar and she will present my paper.
Okay, ma'am. But
So,
actually, that's the information that I've received from the organizing team regarding this technical session. In that, it's
okay.
written that you'll be collaborating with Manju Chauhan.
Yeah, of course, they are my research scholar and
Okay.
but my paper will be presented only by Vandana.
In this technical session only, ma'am, or in the next one?
No, in this technical section, if you have written her name.
I don't. May I request the organizing team to clarify the situation,
Yeah,
because
of
her
course.
name is not there.
Yeah, yes, of course. If you have today busy schedule, so then you can also divert it to tomorrow.
No. That's not an issue with me, but I just wanted to clarify with the team, because her name is not there. Maybe her name is there in the next technical session.
Okay, okay,
Yes.
okay.
Because as per the instructions, the next scholar
Yes,
would
yes,
be
ma'am. So
Richa
you can.
Sharma.
Okay. You can follow your instructions. So Vandana, she can present in next session. जो भी technical section आप होगा आप उसमें देख
Okay,
लीजिएगा.
ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much. Okay. Vandana, best wishes for the next session.
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. So, Richa, are you there?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here. Am I audible?
Okay. Yeah, you're audible. Please go on with your presentation now.
Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am. Okay. So, hello everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Richa and I'm here to present our paper on historical underpinnings, tracing the past in the Gunny Sack by M.G. Vasanji. Uh, to s- Before we start with the paper and what it is, I would like to just tell you people the importance of history. All of us are aware of it, but just to highlight it, Martin Luther said, "We are not makers of history; we are made by history." So, migration has always been a natural instinct of human beings who keep on moving and progressing. To fulfill their dreams, mainly of economic betterment, the diaspora struggles at socio cultural and geopolitical fronts. So, the present paper discusses the concept of Indian diaspora in the light of history of Indian migration to East Africa, particularly in the late 18th and the 19th century. Uh, Vasanji, who has been a part of this history, chronicles in this novel how the determined characters of his are trying to accommodate themselves in the new land, the other land. Vasanji portrays his characters in the backdrop of such setting where they appear as explorers and not merely as tourists. Their contribution to East Africa is clearly visible. What these characters were determined to do and what Vasanji, in the role of a historian, documents in his novels is a focal point of discussion in this paper. History has always captivated Vasanji. The subject of history occupies central position in his writings because he has gone through the bitter experience of racial subjugation and socio-political apathy in East Africa. His texts are potent with the stark realities of the indifferences of colonial rule, the marginalized status of South Asian Indian communities, and their loss of belongingness. History occupies the central position in his novels. The Gunny Sack, he, it actually depicts the history, and in the terms of Vasanji, I quote, in astronomical terms, it was Samvat 1942 when Dhanji Govindji first set foot in Matamu 1885 AD, and he asked for the shop of Mukhi. Unquote. Vasanji's novels are written after 2 decades of East Africa's freedom from the British rule. The past of Indians in East Africa is smeared with the stories of socio-racial oppression and cultural exclusion. Vasanji's narration is authentic because Vasanji himself has witnessed social apathy during this time. It is through the vehicle of the novel that Vasanji shares his lived experiences. He has witnessed how difficult it was for his family to migrate to Dar es Salaam in Tanzania when the anti-colonial struggle by the Mau Mau militants was active. This was the time in 1964 when Tanzania got freedom and suffered financial setback. The Indian migrants, due to their business acumen, acquired a noticeable position in the economic structure of the nation. This made the East African insecure and eventually jealous. And so, most of the East African nations started treating Indians as outsiders. So, here we can see the ironies of the situation. We were ourselves colonized, but when we were in Africa, we were seemed to be a part of the entire colonial rule. We were considered as someone were actually oppressing the Africans. So the Indians who were uprooted from the native land and could not reroot in the adopted land continued to live the life in the state of exile. It is through the Ganisa that Vasanji presents the picture of living a disconnected life with the feeling of depression. Vasanji narrates how the Indians were caught in the war. He says, and I quote, "The community in Matamu, 50 years old and more, vanished overnight." The shattered feelings of Jibai, the great grand aunt of Salim, who is the narrator of the Gunny Sack, are echoed in one of the short stories by Bharati Mukherjee. And she says, and I quote, "There are stages to pass through: rejection, depression, acceptance, reconstruction. Depressed acceptance is the plateau we have reached." Vasanji's characters pass through this depressed acceptance, the plateau of depressed acceptance. They are nostalgic, they are lost, helpless, uprooted, divided, and homeless. And they are disconnected both from the native land and also in the host land. It is very ironic to see that diaspora remains isolated on socio-cultural fronts. For a diaspora, crossing of geographical, social, and cultural boundaries is full of challenges. But the characters find solace in the philosophical statement of Said: "The man who finds his homeland sweet is still a tender beginner. He to whom every soil is as his native one is already strong, but he is perfect to whom the entire world is as a foreign land." Unquote. There is a phrase in the Gunny Sack which is uttered by Salim, the narrator of the novel, who is cherishing the bitter and sweet memories of his past, and he exclaims, I quote, "The Mau Mau years did not tarnish our memories of Eden." The phrase "memory of Eden" reminds of the poetic expression by Shelley, who writes, "Within the surface of time's fleeting river, its wrinkled image lies, as then it lay, immovably unquiet and forever. It trembles, but it cannot pass away." The immovable and unquiet wrinkled image is the image of the past that trembles within the surface of the time, but cannot pass away. it is through one or the other characters in this novel that Vasanji chronicles almost all historical events that put the Indians in claustrophobic situation. The gunny sack is symbolic of past memories that enter the present and also affect the future of the characters that turn the pages of history. It presents the quest motive as the characters search for identity, individual and collective. Jibai's well-preserved sack, the sack of the gunny sack, connects Dhanji Govindji to his great grandson Salim, who calls the sack a seductive companion. The other adjectives that Vasanji uses for this gunny sack are old, this poor dear, sagging brown shape, brown and dusty, looking threatened and helpless, brown pouch, and one who holds many secrets. All these adjectives help comprehend the importance and impressions that the past, the kind of influence the past has and it creates. Salim finds this inheritance holding the past in the stories of the past. He personifies the sack not only by naming it as Shehrbanu, but by also talking to it. And I'm presenting one of the dialogues which has been quoted in the novel. What was his scene, Shehrbanu, that could be equated to the ravages of the war? Only now she begins to tell, to explicate the crime that Jibai herself would only hint at. Now that the secret of one green book are unlocked and the accounts of the past lie open. Vasanji reveals the truth about making of an identity in the new world. The sin that Salim talks about is of the great grandfather Dhanji Govindji, who stole the community wealth that was entrusted to him. Dhanji spent the money in search of his half-caste son, Hussaini, who did not care about the social taboo and kept on meeting his African mother, Bibi Taratibu. On being threatened by Dhanji, he left home and also his wife Moti and never returned. So, memory plays quite an instrumental role. Memory plays quite an instrumental role to Vasanji's characters, who investigate the ethnic history and take a plunge into the sack of the past. With the help of Jibai's sack, Salim evokes his past, recalls his ancestral heritage and legacy. Jibai allows him to have an access to Dhanji Govindji's book, through which Salim reveals not only the history of his family, but the history of Indians in East Africa. Vasanji brings before us the migration of Indians from their India to East Africa. Vasanji fabricates his historical migration and presents the sense of belongingness for home as well as host countries. The past is evoked by these characters, but it does not obstruct their progress and acculturation to the adopted land. It has been observed that over a period of time, the diasporic characters attain growth of awareness, although it takes generations time in getting materialized. For these characters, past remain an active force that flows into the current moment, along with the strong call of the future. Vasanji writes in Gunny Sack, and I quote, "Thus, the disposition of the past to be remembered and acknowledged, if only partly understood, without the baggage of paraphernalia." Thank you.
Thank you, Richa. Thank you for your nice presentation. I think now we are done with all the 4 presentations and we are ready to take up questions. The house is open for questions. We'll start with the first presenter, Benjamin. Benjamin, I really liked your topic, the topic that you've taken, because, I felt that nowadays many people think that poetry is, it seems to be pushed aside and it's lost its that beauty and importance and glamour, especially for the research work. But I feel that during the past 50 years, there's a lot of outburst of Indian there's poetry in English that is published in India and abroad. And especially this poetry of exile has acquired a significant position in this realm of Indian English poetry.
Yeah.
So, Benjamin, I just want to ask one thing, that how do you think that this is adding a new dimension? How this poetry is adding a new dimension to diasporic studies?
It's upcoming because this diaspora studies it's very upcoming, and it's even more newer in the poetry poetry area. Although I don't know, like the label diaspora was not imposed in the 1950s, 60s. Although Don Morias and all those poets were writing outside of India. It's problematic, but I think because of the extremely connected world that we're living in right now, I think it's gaining grounds. And and the problem is they don't want to be identified merely as Indian poets anymore. They are pushing forward to have to be identified in their own terms as diaspora poet. And they're like I said in my paper, they have this Eurocentric ambition still, that they want to be like, for example, the poetry of Kavita Jindal. I've interviewed her 2 years ago, and her poetry is not in the Indian curriculum, but her poetry has been embraced by the UK government in their high school curriculum. And same with the American counterparts, the Matwala Diaspora Collective, they boldly mention in their introduction that their one of their major goals is to be included in in the American literature scene. So it's very problematic, but they are pushing for a very solid identity of their own.
Yeah, right. And it's really interesting to see that how these women writers, especially from South Asia also, how they're writing in confessional modes. And when they write about conflicts, they write about love affairs, they write about, memories of the past, or they articulate their fractured selves. So I think that is contributing a lot. That's bringing a new, world to us, and that's bringing new experiences to the world. So
80% of these people who are kind of like spearheading these collectives, they are women, actually.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Benjamin. Anyone interested asking any question to Benjamin?
Hello, ma'am. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Benjamin, you just mentioned about the classification of anthologies in your presentation. Three types of anthologies. Can you give some example to make it more clear for me?
Oh yeah. I made three classifications. One is canonical classification, and then a topical canonical classifications. Example, the easy examples for canonical anthologies are the ones that is being prescribed in schools, prescribed in schools, university curriculums, and so on and so forth, where the poets mentioned in those anthologies become canonical poets. They hand it down from, and they are studied by a lot of students every year. So they like the poets mentioned in these anthologies become canonical poets over time. The second anthology that the second categorization that I made is topical anthologies, which is like even big presses like Penguin, Bloomsbury, and all, they are picking this up because there is money in it. Most recent example that I can give you is during 2020. Penguin just rushed forward to gather, like to advertise and gather poets, to write poetry about, about the pandemic. So it is kind of it becomes a categorical anthology, and they published it and they moved a lot of volumes and made a lot of money like that. So these are topical anthologies. And then Diaspora Anthologies is the one that I've been talking about, these collectives that have been set up abroad. They're pushing out anthologies,
Okay, thank you so much, Benjamin. Any other question for him? Okay, now we'll move on to the second presenter, that is P. Kavin Kumar, and his topic was Post-Colonial Alienation in Coetzee's Disgrace and Untouched, The English Patient, A Humanistic Study. Well, Kavin, it was a wonderful presentation, and both the novels that you've taken up, I think both of the novels, they talk about the quest for the lost identity and of course is journey for their self-discovery. And Disgrace, as we talk about, it illustrates that colonial oppression is not only suffered in racialized but also a gendered way. But do you think Coetzee's philosophical view of the situation is not from a racial standpoint, but from a humanitarian standpoint as well? Do you agree with this?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Of course. This is also good, ma'am. See, when it comes to a character called Lisa, she knows that she's being with the African people, like the character called Petrus, and he feels safe when it comes to his own father.
Yeah.
So it automatically we can conclude that she feels safe with the black people, and black people is no more like problematic to them.
Right, the way Coetzee has juxtaposed two storylines in this about the sexual abuse, where on the one hand there is this black woman who's raped by white men, and then there is another white woman who's raped by black men. So I think these women belong to different races, but they are victims of the same sexual oppression or abuse, I would say. And I think the sexual domination of women is a major strategy, that has continued from colonial period, and it's still continuing in this post-colonial period as well, as a weapon for this manifesting the power struggle between the races, And this novel truly brings up how this gendered aspect of colonial history and post-apartheid reality also. So that was well presented, and now may I invite questions from the house as well?
Yes.
Anyone interested? Any question from the house? Well, I think, Kavin, they are quite satisfied with your presentation. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Now we'll move on to the third presentation, that is by Manju Chauhan, and in collaboration with Dr. Anita Goswami, and their topic was Dislocation to Relocation and Self-Actualization in the two novels of Chitra Banerjee Devakaruni, Arranged Marriage and Mistress of Spices. So I think I'm reminded here of a quote by Devakaruni who says, home is where you move frequently through the dark. And I think Devakaruni fully explores these themes of that diasporic themes like cultural oppression, racial discrimination, cultural assimilation, and discovery of voices through both male and female characters. Manju, do you think Chitra has presented her characters? I mean, it is, we can, I mean, when we read her novels, we can strongly feel that her novels, her characters are so rebellious, so assertive, so bold. You know? So do you agree with this thing? Manju, are you there? Manju, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I think Manju, I think she has lost the connections, or I think she's not there. Okay, so
Ma'am,
yeah,
if you don't mind, ma'am, may I answer that question
sure,
about
sure.
Divakaruni? Ma'am, you have very rightly pointed it out that Divakaruni's characters are quite rebellious in nature. But ma'am, when we observe them quite closely, we realize that their true they get adapted. They try to react as per the situation. Initially, they have that typical what we call a feminine nature attached to them. They try to avoid all kind of chaos, all kind of conflicts, and they wanted to, and they are huge, they are ready to give sacrifices as well.
Yeah.
But over the period of time, as the time passes, they realize that no, their self-worth is something which should be given importance, and that is how they grow in society. So ma'am, I think that their rebellious nature definitely comes to them, but it comes to them quite gradually. In almost all of her works we can find that.
Yeah, that is what I feel, that
Yeah.
the characters in her novels, you know, Indian migrant women, they are very resistant to rigid and uneven cultural practices. And that's, I think that's really good, and that's really inspiring for women in society as well.
Yes.
So now maybe move on to the last presenter, Richa. It's you only again. So
Yes, ma'am.
your presentation was also very nice, wonderfully presented, well structured, and the gunny sack. I think this was your topic was historical underpinnings, tracing the past in the gunny sack by M.G. Vasanji. And this is, I think, another form of age-old colonial domination, and these all these characteristics of diaspora themes they find unique articulation in his novel. Is a great writer, I think, and in this novel also he's explored this post-colonial fragmentation and this displacement of the identity, I think, of East African hybrid people.
Yes,
so,
ma'am.
well, it was wonderfully present. I now invite questions from the participants. If anyone is interested in asking question, please.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah.
This is Kavin.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. I would like to ask a question.
Yeah, Kavin, please continue.
Ma'am, it was really a very nice presentation.
Thank you, Kavin.
And my question is how would you compare the Ganisak to other novels by N.G. Vasanji you have read?
Yeah.
Does it handle similar or different themes, and in what ways actually?
Okay. So I have covered almost in the entire literary over of M.G. Vasanji. When we see the Gunny Sack, the No New Land, and the Book of Secrets, when we read them like one after the other in a proper sequence, the way I've mentioned them, we'll find that all of them talk about, in fact, the entire literary over talks about the diasporic experiences. But in the Gunny Sack, we find a major emphasis on the Indians who migrated to East Africa and their dilemma and their inclination like how they were in India and what were their challenges when they shifted to East Africa. When we move to the No New Land, we will observe that the character Nuruddin Lalani is the name of the protagonist of No New Land. He migrates to Canada from Africa. Okay, so in there we'll find that he kind of compares his dislocation, his double displacement, I would rather say, from India to Africa, and then again from Africa to Canada. So this is how No New Land is different from the Gunny Sack. Now coming to the third novel, which is A Book of Secrets. In this novel, what happens is the character actually delves again into the past, looking at the entire journey from Canada to Africa and to India. So that entire circle becomes complete in The Book of Secrets. When the other novels such as Assassin Song is concerned, in that song we find more inclination and more information about the Indian culture in specific, which is quite missing in the previous three novels which I have talked about. Again, A Delhi Obsession, which is his like a novel which was released in 2019. So in that again we have a person named Munir, who comes back to India from Canada. He is also a double displaced migrant, and how is he trying to accommodate in the new culture, wherein he is facing discrimination as a Canadian and also as a Muslim diaspora. So there, although the concept is diaspora, the entire overview comprises of the same thing, but the way he has tackled those themes are quite different. History usage definitely is there, but the sections of history which he has incorporated is completely different. And again, the portrayal is quite marvelous. The characters, most of his characters are men, but in the very first novel, The Gunny Sack, the protagonist is a female character. So his literary over is quite you can say quite vast, and at the same time quite very varying in nature, differs a lot from one another. I hope that answered your question, Kavin.
Yes.
Thank you, Richa, for such a wonderful explanation. And
Thank you, ma'am.
I think with this, we come to the end of this technical session, and we really had a wonderful session. All the presenters were very nice, and I really enjoyed this session.